Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. We've had a week off. Now, usually we have a few weeks off around this time of the year and, of course, the season, but now we are previewing a fucking final. Carlton East Sydney this week, Elimination final, Friday, 7:50 p.m. at the MCG, prime time for the first week of the finals. The return of Carlton Football Club back where they belong. But first things first, Duffy, how are you? And how was your weekend a bit? Because we haven't really done an episode in a while. But first things first, mate, how are you feeling?
I'm good, mate. Obviously, it's Monday as we record this, so there's still a little bit of time before the first bounce on Friday night. But I'm not nervous yet. Obviously I've got more excited currently heading into the game. Obviously, there's a little bit of nerves, but currently I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling optimistic. And like you said, it's weird to be in this position. You know, people talking about our football team in the other premiership contenders. You know, I'm not talking premierships currently, but we're going to take it week by week. But it's just good to be a part of that conversation because it's been way too long. All those other teams, they've had their chance now, and we're in the big time. We are in the prime time slot Friday night, and let's just hope it doesn't piss down because it is supposed to. So hopefully holds out.
Yeah, and that's good. And of course, that's a conversation where for our ins and outs, if that will maybe affect our ins and outs, and of course, heading into Carlton's selection, whether that's going to be a factor towards if we play a certain player or if we maybe drop a certain player because of the weather. We don't know. I think both of our opinions are pretty similar where you can't worry about the weather and you just have to play your best team and you have to play the team that you think will beat the Swans on Friday night. But before we move into some finals content, because there is heaps to come for, of course, the lineups and, of course, some moments that that we'll touch on for our final favorite moment in the navy blue in our lifetime. But the first thing we have to touch on, which is quite credited, I guess, which is, of course, Ed Curnow and his retirement. Probably not the career that he probably saw play out at the start of his career. I think he wanted a little bit more success, but I think the type of football that he's played over a long period of time. And I just think that the way that he's kind of conducted himself on and off the field has been absolutely fantastic. Professionalism is something that is coming through the club, and just a great guy to have around the club. But a quick word for quick word for Duffy Boy. A quick word for Ed Curnow, Duff. I guess just what were your thoughts on his retirement? Is it a surprise? But also touch on his career. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily a surprise. I think we knew 2023 was going to be the final year for Ed. But seriously, like we say all the time, he gets the most out of himself, and he's done that for his whole career. He's had to fight for a spot. You know, he was on the Adelaide Crows list for a year early on in his career, and then obviously was delisted after a season. Plied his trade in the VFL for Box Hill, won their BNF, and then we ended up picking him up in the rookie draft, and he played round one the next season, I think 2011, I believe. And yeah, so he's just been that player that's, I guess he's the final guy of our kind of childhood, those crop of players, because now I think the oldest guy we have now is Nick Newman, who's only been around our club for the last 5 or so years. So it's a bit of a bittersweet moment, but we shout out to Ed because seriously, there was some dark times in his period at the football club, and to play through all those times without, sooking or, he's just one of those guys you need around the club, and he will be crucial in this final series, whether he's on field or off field, because at training he sets standards. He seems to be a good vibe, and if anyone hasn't watched his speech, the retirement speech, it's the funniest, most emotional, funniest thing. To be honest, I had a bit of a tear in my eye watching it, but it was just him, because that's what he is, Ed Curnow. When he plays, he's Ed Curnow. When he kicks goals, he's pushing blokes. Like I think in round 2 when Charlie kicked that goal from outside 50 and they're both bumping each other, it's like they're in the backyard. You know what I mean? They're both good human beings, obviously good footballers as well, but they're most importantly good human beings, and perfect for our football club. And I wish he had all the best in retirement, because he definitely deserves a good retirement.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to sum it up. Just the way that he's kind of, I mean, as I said earlier, just the way that he's conducting himself on and off the field. But I think how much off field, how much that helps the players around him. I know that Patrick Cripps would probably be one of the first guys that would come out and say how important Ed Kernow's been around his career, because I think, especially with what Paddy Cripps went through at the start of his career and how he's kind of turned that around, Ed Kernow's been through that the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole career. His whole career. And of course, he's played in some finals, but the later stage of his career, I just think it's unfortunate, but also I don't think he would really want it any other way, because that's just how his character is. And of course, he would love a premiership, but I think with Ed Kernow, I think the one, I guess, proud moment when he looks back is being able to play with his brother. I reckon looking back in maybe 10 years' time when they're both retired, hopefully Charlie is still playing, but when they're both retired, looking back, I think to kind of see those moments where, like also when Charlie Kernow kicked that goal in round 2, and actually having that. And then also, I think it was 2017 when Charlie kicked that goal in the Gold Coast. Just moments like that really stand out for mine. Now to move on to some finals moments, and it's pretty unbelievable that we're recapping some finals moments to actually see some more moments on Friday night. But Daff, if you were to put one finger on a moment that has happened in our 3 or 4 final series that we've kind of been alive for, and we've kind of been invested into the club, if you were to name one finals moment, what's the first moment that comes to your mind?
Yeah, well, there hasn't been too many, to be fair. So, we're not picking from 100, unfortunately. And I hope in future videos and future years, hopefully we are talking about more moments, specifically from this year's final series. But, well, for me, obviously those 2 wins against Essendon and Richmond are massive. But I think I didn't go to the Essendon one in 2011, but I did go to the Richmond one. And I clearly remember everything that happened on that day. Like, it was just something about that experience and being the underdogs and stuff like that. But for me, we posted on the socials the other day, and it was Jeffy Garlett running in to open goal.
Propping, Betts gets him, and taking him was Garlett. And you can put down the glasses. It's an amigo. It's an amigo that'll finish it off. Kick it, Jeffrey. He does. Carlton are on their way to Sydney.
I remember, like, we were sitting top deck, we're looking down on that, like, near that 50. So we're down that end, and it was just like, it was like, would have been 15% Carlton supporters that day, because Richmond broke their finals drought. They had 80,000 there, and we had probably 20,000 there. We were outnumbered, and you could tell in that first 3 quarters that they had the crowd behind them. Obviously, we were behind the Blues as well, but it was just that extra roar, that Richmond roar they have. And it just, we didn't back down. And that moment was just like, it was just, we weren't supposed to be in that position. Obviously the whole Essendon saga went, and everyone's like, oh, Richmond beat them easy. And there's nothing better than underdog story. Unfortunately, we didn't do anything next week, but no, it was good.
Yeah, well, that's probably the one moment that comes to my mind. Now, I was going to say that, but I had a feeling you would mention that, so I knew that I had a backup in my mind. But it's the same game. Now, I didn't go to that game, so I have never been live. Sorry?
First one. So it's your first one this week. Holy shit.
First one this week. And how shit is that? I'm 22 and I'm fucking going. Now, there's guys like, I have Richmond supporters and Hawthorn supporters around, like a mates of mine, and they have watched 3 premierships, 3 peats, and all this crap, and I've seen 0 finals. So just only the Carlton supporters really know how we feel about that. But yeah, the moment that comes to my mind is Chris Judd. And when Waite handballed it to Judd, this will be fitty.
Warnock with the body. Heavy use. Hooks it down behind. Tuck. Intercepted it though. Waite comes again. Waite. Look away. Hand pass to Judd. This would be fitting. The man who brought them back puts the icing on the cake. It's not done yet, but it's looking terrific.
Just stuff like that where that Chris Judd's always going to show up in those crucial moments in a big final. And dare I say it, I mean, we're going to see it Friday night, but a player that comes to my mind who's going to show up in those big finals is the captain, Patrick Cripps. And I reckon it's crazy that Cripps hasn't played a final.
Yeah.
And it's just so exciting seeing guys like that, Walshy, Weeders, all these finals players, Charlie Curnow, just guys coming through where finally they get to show what they've got on the big stage. Because as everyone says, finals isn't AFL. It's a different sport.
Yeah, it is.
It is a different sport. So that's why it's a big test. But I think the 22, 23 players that go out there on Friday night will be well and truly ready. So, but now we'll move on to, I guess, a little bit more into the game and what's going to happen on Friday night, what we might predict, what might happen on Friday night. But we're going to touch on, I guess, the finals experience. And I found this out today, actually. So 8 players out of our current list has played in a final. So Ed Kerno, of course, that we just touched on, Adam Sard, Lewis Young, Blake Acres, Nick Newman, George Hewitt, Mitch McGovern, and to not really, I mean, I guess the 7, but Zach Williams as well, of course, who's on the current list. That is the 8 players who have actually featured in finals football. But other than that, there is no one else who has featured in a final, not a grand final, a final. So pretty insane. But to touch on those, I guess, those 8 players, Duff, I know that there's a few players in there that will, of course, feature on Friday night. But because even now, doing this preview, I feel a little bit weird inside. Like, I think the viewers and the listeners can probably tell that I'm a little bit rattled. And I'm sure you would be the same, Duff. And just, it's a weird time because we don't know what it's like. And especially since we've only been doing this podcast for 2 or 3 years, we have experienced the lowest of the low. And now we're kind of seeing the other side of it where, wait, we're in a fucking elimination final. Yeah. So it's a different sort of feeling for both of us. But and of course to all Carlton supporters, I just think it's a massive, but it's a great feeling because, as you said, we can see players like Cripper out there, Doherty, Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, all these guys out there that are born to play finals. It's just so exciting to see these guys out there on Friday night. But now we'll move on to the potential inclusions, and it's so 2 locks that we know. Of course, Carlton have come out and said that they will be available for the first week of finals, and that's of course Paddy Cripps and Sam Doherty. They will both be available for this week. Now, 3 names. So Matt Kearney, of course, is now available. He is not on the injury list anymore, so he will now be available to play if, of course, Vossi chooses to play him. Jesse Motlop, and probably another player that is a little bit interesting, I guess, conversation with the weather is Mark Minternet, and if he is going to actually play on Friday night. And they were all, of course, notable absentees from round 24. So these guys just probably, I think a few of them were, I think Pitto and Motlop especially, they were the 2 guys that I would have loved to see against GWS. But once again, it's another factor with the weather if you do play Pitto. But of course, Blake Acres, as we mentioned last episode, he seems like it's a good chance that Blake Acres will be all good to go. I know that he's doing a fitness test to play this week, but as it says there, I think it's a great chance that he'll play. But out of those names, Dave Boyd, to give us a bit of a I guess a spoiler for your ins and outs. How do you see? Well, what's the impact of Paddy Cripps and Sam Doherty coming in, but also some other names there? How big are they?
Yeah, I think, with those first 2 names, with Cripps and Doherty, I think, like I touched on before, I think you need these guys in a final. They're level heads. They're leaders. Doc might not have the title of captain anymore, but he's definitely high up in that kind of leadership hierarchy at the football club on field. But yeah, it's tough. We have so many different people you could play, and I think there's going to be a couple guys stiff, unfortunately, especially in my ins and outs currently. I'm looking at my outs now, and it's going, okay, like we're in a really good situation, and it's going to be stiff for certain blokes because they're going to be missing out on a chance to play in a final. But what are we going to do? We're here to win finals. I'm not here just to make September and crawl over the line maybe in a final, because you can't be doing that, because the Swans, like touching on experience, they've made the grand final last year. You know, like I know they've struggled for the year and had some questionable wins, including the North Melbourne one where the whole interchange situation. If they lost that game, they missed finals and the whole Adelaide situation. So for me, it's about putting the foot on the throat, and I think that starts at the inclusion table. Not being too scared to play certain blokes or bite the bullet.
Yeah, well, it's actually a good point to put with Sydney, and it's games where the Adelaide one, that was a loss. It should have been a loss.
Yeah.
North Melbourne is another great example where those two games, if it wasn't for, I guess, unfortunate circumstances, they wouldn't have won that game. Yeah. And those games, and then that means that Adelaide come into play, Western Bulldogs come into play, all these teams come into play. I generally don't reckon Sydney is. I want to put it in a certain way where I don't like. Yeah. I will say, I think the top 8, if they make it, you deserve it.
Yeah, 100%.
But I don't reckon they deserve it. But I just see that it's a chance where we know that we've well and truly deserved the 5th spot. They've just skimmed into 8th spot. We show on Friday night that we are the 5th ranked team and they're the 8th ranked team. We need to do that on Friday night. And I think it's just another story where, as you said then, we don't have the grand final experience. Sydney do. Yeah. They have a great coach in John Longmire, but it's just I think right now the players will be good to go. Just because, as you just said before, I think the experience that we've had probably the last 10 weeks, that's been finals intensity. Well, it seems like it. So I think Friday night, I think they'll be well and truly ready. But now to touch on the ins and outs, Dave Boy, you touched on there about a few stiff, outs. Who are you bringing in and who are you bringing out? And also, name your sub.
Yeah, I've thought about it 700 times, and to be honest, after filming this, I'll probably change it 100 times. I might hear what you've got to say and change it. And it's hard to really lock in. For me, it's the outs. The ins are the easy part. I think the outs are the hard part because there's certain players that are fringe, but they've been playing in the winning streak, so you don't want to drop them. But it's like you have to drop them. It's hurting my brain right now, and I'm due to go with these names. It's not going to be concrete because it's so tough. But for me, this will be my concrete. I'm not going to fight to the death because of these, decisions. We're not going to have a full-blown argument, yelling at each other for these certain selections. I just don't know what the internal thinking is. But for me, I'll start with my ins. Paddy Cripps, Sam Doherty, Jesse Motlop, and Mark Pitternet will play. I think that we'll have 4 ins. That was easy for me. I think that was easy for me. But like you said before, and we touched on before we filmed, based on weather, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. They might not change a thing, but we'll have to wait and see for that. Outs, I'll start off with a midfielder. Paddy Dow is going to be dropped for this clash. I unfortunately think he just has to make way. There's no ifs or buts about it, unfortunately, and he could very well be the sub. Next, Lockie Fogarty. I've got him out. I was tossing up between him or David Cunningham. For me, I think they play similar roles, and I don't know if you can drop anyone else for them. You know what I mean? I think it's hard to drop. You can't drop Bowies, of course, and you've got to bring in Motlop, who's that genuine small forward. So I think one of them has to make way. And this is the one that I've been tossing out for ages. I'm happy with both of them playing. I'm happy with one of them playing. It's just, I think he has to make way. It's going to be stiff as for Fogg. Absolutely stiff, but I think he'll be dropped. Next for me is Corey Durden. I think he just comes out for Motlop. That's the easy one. And the 4th one is Caleb Marchbank. I think he has to make way for mine. Just with something about the Swans forward line that I like putting Doherty back for this clash. I think they've got a few good small forwards. Also got some key tools in McLean and Amadi, but I think the dangerous one is Papley for me. I think if he plays well, they're a solid chance, and if he doesn't play well and we nullify him, then I think we're a good chance of winning this football game, Patto.
Yeah, well, to touch on Tom Papley very quickly, I know that he was, of course, out in the Adelaide game, and there was a bit of an injury cloud, but I think it's confirmed that he will be back this week for the final, and I guess just the week off, and also how he missed the game against Melbourne. I think that was just a bit of precaution, and they didn't really want to risk him too much, knowing that Sydney was a very good chance to play finals at that stage. So they pretty much were taking a risk. But of course, it was just kind of making sure that Tom Papley was 100% ready to go because he's a finals player and he has to play. Now, I will say this right now. My ins are the exact same as yours. Paddy Cripps, Sam Doherty, Jesse Motlop, Mark Pitnet, they are all in for mine. Now, my outs are very different. So, out, I'll start off with, of course, the same one that you have is Paddy Dow. Oh, and then also Corey Durdin as well. So, Paddy Dow and Corey Durdin, they're both out for me. So, of course, I bring in Cripps for Dow. I bring in Motlop for Durden. Now, I'm bringing in Sam Doherty for Zach Fisher.
Okay, yeah.
And
that was another one for me. That was close.
Yeah, there's probably about 6 players where you're just like, do you bring him in? But do you bring him out? So I'm the exact same. I've gone through. I mean, texting my mate, texting you, texting everyone at home. Like, is this the right call? And you're like, what the fuck are you thinking? Yeah,
so hard.
It's so hard. And they're they would text me back saying, "Are you fucking losing your mind, Patto?" And then I'll be like, "I don't think I am." But so my other outs. So of course Zach Fisher, and my last out is Ollie Hollands.
Oh, okay.
Ollie Hollands. Now my reasoning for that is so of course Sam Doherty would come in for Zach Fisher to play that defensive role because I completely agree. I think Sam Doherty is better behind the ball, and I think an Alex Chin-Cotter can be that guy to take over the Fish role in terms of getting more of the ball. Because I think Chin-Cotter's role, the past probably 6 weeks where Zach Fisher has been playing, I think he's been like, even when he first came in, he was getting a lot of the ball, but he was actually using the ball quite effectively. And I think with Chin-Cotter, his ball use is quite effective. And when he gets his chance, I think he's the type of guy that off the halfback flank, he has the speed as well. So that's my only thinking with Zach Fisher. I'm just like, it's quite tough because I do like Fisher's craftiness off the halfback flank, but I just don't think he's a little bit too attacking, and I don't think I can trust. I'm just going purely off if they will stand up in finals. And I'm not saying these 4 can't. That's why it's so tough. But and then also Ollie Hollands as well. I think I'm only going off where I want Akers on one wing and Matt Cottrell on the other. Now, the past 2 weeks, probably from where it was the Melbourne game to about the Giants game, that I guess bracket, I was looking around and I'm like, how's this finals team going to play out? And I was looking purely at this role where going into finals, I don't want 3 wingers playing. I want 2 genuine wingers because we've got too many half forwards because I have David Cunningham and Lockie Fogarty playing. So that's my thinking because I'm sure you have the Cottrell and the Hollands as that half forward, but you're bringing Fogarty out. So that's why it's just so it's such a insane conversation because we both see it completely different. Because for me, always Motlop, Fog, and Cunners are locks in my forward line. But it's just everyone because everyone sees it differently. I'm sure comments would be saying, and then I don't agree with Patto, but I also don't agree with Daf. There's plenty of people out there. But now my question to you before we move on to the back line, of course, for the ground overview, your sub, because now it's a big conversation. Who is your sub going to be for Friday night?
It's tough. It's so tough because if I drop Fisher, it would have made it a lot easier to make him the sub, in my opinion, because he can play a few roles. For me, I think his form's too good to drop him entirely, and I think it's Paddy Dow has to come in. I feel like in the last quarter or second half, we don't know with our mids, they could have a soft tissue injury. Touch wood. I hope they don't. But if they can't get through 4 quarters and we don't have a midfield to replace them, the Swans have got a pretty good midfield. Like they can get the job done. So if you can bring in a Paddy Dow that can play that midfield role, it'll be. We need that energy, and he's got that burst. Imagine him in the last quarter, fit and firing. That's a thing for me. But there's plenty of other guys you could definitely go as a sub. You got other guys for me, based on my omissions, you could probably put Marchie back there if you want a key back stock as you know what I mean. Like it's just there's so many different options, and I actually want to literally sit in on the selection committee this weekend because it'd be so interesting to see what their point of views are, because we don't know. We don't know what they're thinking at all. There could be someone under a little bit of a nickel or a little bit of a something, or there's certain matchups that they think might work well. So it's going to cause headaches. Sydney will have absolutely no idea who the hell we're going to bring in. So it's going to be it's exciting. It's exciting. I wish we were more, locked into who we had in heading into this game. But I think our continuity over the last 10 weeks has been okay in terms of probably about 15 to 16 blokes have played every week. And then, the last 6, whether it's, Walshers and Cheras and been in and out. So it hasn't been, the 2022 back end kind of, injury list we've had.
Yeah, completely agree. My sub is Paddy Dow. So you're completely spot on, and I don't need to say anything else because you absolutely touched it on beautifully. But we'll now move on to the ground overview. Now, we usually touch on our backline, midfield, ruck, and forwards. So, of course, as we always do, we touch on our backline first. And we always touch on a key matchup for each line. And the first one is a pretty anticipated matchup, and it's Nick Newman up against Isaac Heaney. So Isaac Heaney, I reckon for about 5 years, ever since Swans have been kind of around the finals race, he's been talked about being a big finals player. He's been talked about as a Dustin Martin player, but he just hasn't really been able to put it to on the ground in finals football. And we know he can do it. And I think this year, once again, there's been a lot of people saying it's Isaac Heaney's year. If Sydney make it, I think he's going to be a big factor come finals. And once again, I think it's a big chance for Isaac Heaney, but he's up against a great player, Nick Newman. And the other conversation as well with Tom Papley, who goes to Tom Papley? And I think right now, with my opinion, and I know that you'll touch on your opinion as well, Duffy Boy, is Adam Saad's probably going to go straight to Tom Papley. And of course, Joel Amati and also McDonald down there are the two keys. And whether you maybe do play a Marchbank, that's what I have right now. Maybe you do play a Marchbank to kind of help back there. But out of those few names, Duffy Boy in the back line, and of course, Sydney's forward line, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, for me, I think they're the one guy, like you said, I think Heaney can be that guy to really live for them. I think him and Papley have to perform on Friday night for them to have any, impact going forward of the ball. I think their other guy, I'm not underrating their other guys, but, it's finals footy and, they've got some young fellas in McDonald and Amadi. Are they up to it in terms of finals intensity? We'll have to wait and see. I don't want to call anything, don't want to jinx it. So, but yeah, I think Nick Newman's the perfect matchup for Heaney. They're kind of mid-sized players, aren't they? They're kind of not short, not super tall, but they're really effective. And I think when Heaney's going, the Swans just have that kind of extra edge about them. And with the little fella that I talked about, Tom Papley, I think if he didn't play, I think it'd be a massive out for them. So I think it's crucial he plays for them, and if they want a chance of winning. But yeah, Sardi, the perfect matchup, I think, in terms of speed, but you never know. There could be other guys in there that can shift on him. I think that's a good thing about our defense. We're not really locked into an opponent sometimes. You can, they switch and they, unless it's a certain task, like a Nick Newman, a Toby Green or whatever, I think our defense can kind of hold up. Any player can hold up against smalls or tall sometimes. And then, I just think, as a back six, I think we're strong, and we've kept that, similar back six for, probably the back half of the year. Without Lewis Young, we pretty much had the same back six. So it's going to be exciting to see. And I think finals footy is really built off defense and winning games off defense. Yep.
So my question to that before we move on to the midfield, of course, so we both have Sam Doherty transitioning back to kind of fill, for me, it's the Zach Fisher role, but also it's another kind of role for you where Sam Doherty comes back to kind of fill that the key back and also the medium-sized defenders. Does Nick Newman's role change for you if Sam Doherty does go back?
I don't think so. For me, I think he's playing fine. I don't think they need to change anything. I think our back six stacks up on the way they all play individually, in a sense, how they go about it. I think they just work in tandem together, and we've finally found that mix where we don't need to change things come finals, because I know, a lot of teams, when they tend to change their game plan a little bit or tinker it come finals, that it often leads to their downfall. So, it's going to be interesting, mate. It's an exciting prospect. If it's a wet game, it's going to be an important one for the defence to really keep their score low.
Yep, spot on. Okay, so now we'll move on to the midfield clash. I guess it's once again it's a big conversation to kind of wrap our heads around. But as we always do, we touch on a key matchup for. I mean, of course, the backline we did Nick Newman v Isaac Kenny, but this is another big matchup for the ground, and it's of course Sam Walsh, the returning Sam Walsh. I mean, of course, last week he returned, but this week it's kind of a game under his belt up against Errol Gordon. And of course, Gordon was in the All-Australian team, and he's had an absolute super season. I reckon, like if the people, I mean, of course, gamble responsibly, but if you look at the odds, I reckon Errol Gordon, he's $51 or $52 odds or something, and he's a little bit further out than what I would have expected him to be. I think he's had a super season, but I think Sam Walsh beat Errol Gordon. It's a big matchup. But to touch on some other names, we've touched on the finals experience a lot throughout this episode, and it's George Hewitt and Blake Acres in that midfield. I think they have to be the leaders. Where George Hewitt is, of course, playing against his former side, where he has had the finals experience, but also Blake Acres having that finals experience for Fremantle as well. But to touch on Cripps, Walsh, as we just mentioned, Chera, Hollands, if he does play, and Cottrell, and also with Cottrell plays as well. It's a maiden final series, and it's just exciting to see these guys in finals, but also just a little bit. I'm a little bit nervous to see how they'll actually go, but I think we always have to trust our players who go out there every single week. But I guess the midfield combination, Daffy Boy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, straight away that first matchup is very mouth-watering, Patto. I think I agree with you. I think Gordon's really had a superb year. I think he'll take out their BNF definitely for the Swans, and he'll definitely poll very well in the Brownlow. So, I think what he had last week, 42 and 2 goals or something against Melbourne, which is just craziness for a winger in a sense. So, Walshy, not worried whatsoever. I think he'll have an absolute ripper. I think he's 23 now? He's in the right spot now to play finals. He's born for the Walshy, and in his first game back, he still had 28 touches. So, I'll back him in. But that's going to be good. They're both, running beasts, in my opinion. And if Hollands plays, he's another running beast, and Cottrell's another running beast. So it could be a game of really that kind of running power, how both teams can utilise it on the outside. Because I think when we work the ball outside and then in, it works really well in a sense when we're getting enough space out the contest, which is really good. But these other names, Patto, Cripper, I think him and Mills will be on each other the whole night. I think they're the perfect matchup against each other. Two bulls. Obviously, Mills is known for being a little bit of a pest in terms of, being a kind of a tagger, but he's also good with ball in hand as well. I think people forget about that he's actually really good the other way when they do have the ball. So he's one to watch. And, you got Parkers, you got other guys like that. So, I personally think our midfield probably bats a little bit deeper than theirs, which is crazy to say. They were a grand final team last year, probably overachieved last year, in my opinion. Probably, the result in the grand final probably showed that. I know Geelong with a standout all year, but it was kind of, you knew it was kind of going to happen. It was, but once again, you can't underestimate these guys. Luke Parker's played too many finals to count. He's played most years in finals and stepped up massively in big games, and obviously a premiership player. And it's two pretty good young midfields. I know Luke Parker's experience is probably him and Cripper being the most experienced in the midfields. But I think apart from that, both teams are fairly young. You got Rowe Bottoms and other guys like that who aren't old. They're around the 24, 25 mark. So I think if we win the contest, stoppage, everyone's talking about, Carlton's one wood is stoppages. And I think we have to be on top for us to win this game.
Yeah. So you mentioned there about Callum Mills, about maybe them being a matchup for the whole game. Do you see Callum Mills maybe tagging Cripps?
Yes, well, maybe more. Yeah, I guess just keeping, not an eye, but just always keep in touch with him. I think it has to be the matchup. Most times we play him, he's always on grips. So it's going to be, it's exciting. Talking about, really good matchups in a game that, it's going to be up and about. First bounce, it's going to be on. It's going to be on, and I think if we can outmuscle them, which I think we can, we get, we get more stoppages than them. We'll end up getting, 10 to 15 more inside 50s. And you know what happens with 10 to 15 more inside 50s, Patto, with the way and the effectiveness of our forwards in the last 10 weeks, that is just going to create so many opportunities for us to score. So once again, weather could play a part. Weather could play a part, but good teams find a way in any weather.
Yeah. And another matchup, of course, is the key matchup that we've kind of given for the midfield, Sam Walsh and Errol Gulden. They're both very similar players. Very similar. Like they both are gut runners. They don't stop running, but also their skill by foot and of course by hand as well. I think they're both absolutely fantastic. And I think if Sam Walsh kind of had a full year, I think he would be an absolute lock in the All-Australian team as well. But I think it's great to see a guy like Errol Gulden because I'm actually a fan. And as you said, like 42 touches in a game against Demons where they kind of lost. I mean they did lose, but they kind of were winning for a bit, and then Melbourne kind of ran over him in the end. Errol Gulden still was by far the standout, and I think he would definitely get the 3 votes come Brownlow night for that game. But we'll now move on to the ruck combination, the ruck contest, and it's another talking point because we both have Mark Pitnet in, but of course he wasn't seen against the Giants in round 24. So that's another big inclusion, and that's what I was about to say earlier about. I'll kind of throw back to that before we touch on the ruck combination. Where is it a bit of a threat, or is it a bit of a a worry from your end, Daf, bringing 4 players in and dropping 4? Dropping 4 players. Kind of bringing in 4 players and dropping 4 players. Maybe Dow as a sub, but to bring in that many players, does that maybe change your opinion about maybe it's not a great idea changing the structure that much? Or is it more just down to the players are too similar where it's not too much of a worry?
I think the 4 ins, they have to come in for me. I think their form, Pitto, I think he has to come in just due to, I think we have to have 2 rucks, and, the Mackay rucks, that's just not going to happen this year, I don't think, until he, learns a bit more craft. But yeah, the 4 ins for mine are musts. They're needs. They're not just, choosing the best players out of the bunch. I think, you got Cripps, Doherty, Motlop's been in superb form the last 10 weeks. And Pitto's that size we needed last week, in my opinion. I thought, the Giants ran out of the contest a little bit too easy. Is that because, was the foot off the pedal? Probably a bit of both. We were probably a little bit outplayed, but also foot off the pedal. So I think those 4 ins have to come in. And like we said, it's going to be stiff. We're not dropping these guys lightly and dropping them because of their form. We're dropping them because we've got guys that have to be in the team. They have to force their way in. You got the skipper, you got Doherty, and Motlop, like I said before. Yeah, they just have to come in, Patto.
Yeah, well said. So now, of course, we'll move on to the ruck combination, but it's Tom De Koning up against, of course, Tom Hickey, a guy who's probably, I think he has announced his retirement at these seasons. Of course, it's his final season and potentially could be his final game. So he'll be absolutely playing his heart out on Friday night. But as we mentioned, I think we both will see, we both expect to see Pitnet on Friday night. And as that second ruck, Sydney is going to play Hayden McLean as that second ruck, who has actually been quite solid throughout the whole year. And whether they maybe change a Joel Marty through there and maybe throw Hayden McLean forward a little bit more, that's what we're going to see on Friday night. And we don't really know how it's going to be played. That's why coaching is so crucial in finals footy, because you don't know what's going to happen. But I think Hayden McLean will definitely start as that second ruck. But I guess to kind of focus more on Tom De Koning v. Tom Hickey, what's your thoughts on this matchup, Daffy Boy? But of course, to touch on Pitto and Hayden McLean as that second ruck, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, they've got almost 3 options if you add Amadi in there as well. They've definitely got plenty of aces up their sleeve. But yeah, I think I'll be a bit more confident with Pitto coming into the side, having 2 rucks. And nothing against Tom. I just think we need the second ruck in there, especially with the 3 options they have, which is pretty nuts. And I think obviously Hickey, like you said, I think he'll be the main one. So it's going to be a massive challenge for either Tom DeConning or Pitto just to really get Hickey out of the game. His form last year was much better than the form this year, but he did have a very good final series last year, so he knows when to step up in a big game. And TDK and Pitto both playing their first, and they're there for the first bounce. Patto, they're the first two players that have the potential to touch the ball on the weekend. So it's going to be important, and I think once again our ruck is so crucial to our stoppage game and how we can dominate the game through there. So they're going to be arguably the most crucial aspect to our game. And obviously we've got other guys, we've got some superstars in our team, but I think if we really want to knuckle down and win these stoppages and win around the contest, these two are going to be crucial to how the game pans out. Because if we let Hickey, McLean or Amadi off the chain and they push forward, they're going to have the confidence to kick goals, aren't they? When that confidence when you're up and about in the ruck and then you rotate forward, and you often see the rucks that are playing well kick goals. So it's going to be important. It's going to be important, Patto.
Yeah. So you just touched on there about the opening bounce. They both have the opportunity to get the first touch of the football. Is it going to be Tom DeConning or is it going to be Mark Pittonet for the opening contest, the opening bounce on Friday night?
I think it's going to be Pitto.
Me too.
I think it's going to be Pitto for some reason. There's just something about big Pitto putting it down Walsh's throat for the first clearance.
Imagine if it was like, once again, we're not trying to turn this into a gambling, podcast. Imagine if there was like a first disposal sort of thing. Imagine if it was like Walshy, and then next minute you chuck in fucking Nick Newman through there. Imagine that. So, now we'll move on to a bit, of course, gamble responsibly, as we always say. We'll now move on to the forward line, and once again, it's crazy to see a guy, Charlie Curnow, or should I say, Charlie Coleman, up against Tom McCartan, and it's great to see Charlie Curnow in finals football. It's such an exciting sort of prospect, I guess, where you kind of see guys who are built for finals, and we have so many players who haven't been able to finally get to that mark where you can say that you're a finals player. And now Charlie Curnow, hopefully, will be there on Friday night, but he'll be up against, as I just said, Tom McCartan. But to touch on also Jack Martin and how he can turn the game on its head, and especially against GWS, so I don't think he was too great, but I think that was a little bit more where he just wanted to get through the game to make sure he was fit and firing for Friday night. But also to touch on Matt, always, as you've touched on throughout the episode, Jesse Motlop, who we both think he's definitely going to play on Friday night, and Harry Mackay. I think to win the game, they just have to play their role. If they play their role, we have a big chance to win on Friday night. But Daf, to touch on this matchup, Charlie Curnow versus Tom McCartan, but to touch on also the other players and who might go to Jack Martin, whether it's going to be a Dane Rampy, we don't know. Who do you see? How do you see this matchup playing out, but also the other players?
Yeah, for me, I think McCartan definitely goes to Charlie Curnow. But you look at last year's game, round 10, Patto, I'm not sure if you remember, but McCartan on Curnow, and Curnow kicked 6 under the roof. So it's for me, I think it's too hard to stop Charlie at his best. If he's at his best, the way he's been playing, I don't think he can be stopped. I'm not trying to talk him up too much, but seriously, he's in my opinion, the hardest forward matchup in the competition. He's 6'6". He's got the running capacity to run up and down the ground. He can sit on your head. He can out-muscle you, and he kicks goals from 50.
Yeah.
Or off the ground, in the air, everywhere. Like, he's the hardest matchup. Not obviously probably a little bit biased, but he probably is. It probably is similar to Jeremy Cameron in the sense that when they're on, they can't be stopped.
No.
It doesn't matter how good the defender's playing. They can't be stopped. And he kicked 75 goals for a reason this season. That's why he's been, the benchmark in the competition. And the second point, like you said before, Jack Martin. I was talking to some of the boys today at SEN, and I was saying if the weather is the way that people think it's going to be on Friday night. I think he's the type of player that can sneak in a couple of snags. I know why Patto's laughing, because he's picturing it. He is picturing it, Jack Martin in the wet. But yeah, I think he can be a guy that can turn the game on his head, even if it's a low scoring affair. He's that type of guy that you can't buy a goal in. He just gets a couple goals that you need. And then with these last guys, he's Motlop, Harry Mackay, just get it done. For me, I think there's something that's leading me to Harry Mackay having a big one. He's had 2 weeks in the side. Usually gets to about that third week when Harry starts to hit his straps. You know, when he misses a few games and he has a few games, he gets back into it, and then he goes bang and has a standout performance. And it's great that no one's talking about him. Yeah, because everyone's talking about Charlie. Harry's there, like you said, play a role, but he's got the capability to really turn the game on its head like Martin. And we've got other guys, Motlop, he's like these guys have had. We're not just saying this potentially; they've done it in games in the last 10 weeks. That they've made a key difference in all types of games, whether it's always, kicking a goal in that fourth quarter against Melbourne that really set up the win, those important goals. Motlop's 4 goals in the first half against Port Adelaide, which ultimately sunk them. It's exciting, and the Swans have a lot of players down, good small defenders and guys like Rampy, who's played a lot of footy as well, finals footy. So. It's exciting, Patto. We've got a lot of names up there that can win us the game. Doesn't have to be one of them.
Yeah, and I think we need to get. I mean, especially me, because I think I need to give some more credit to Harry Mackay. And you kind of say play your role, but as you just said perfectly there, I think he's a guy that can tear the game to shreds if he gets going. So my question about that, because it's kind of it's not like he's a forgotten player. But it's because the small forwards have been so effective. Harry Mackay is still going to play every single week for the rest of his career. Yes. But it's just kind of he's not as reliant anymore. We don't need to rely on him as much anymore. No. And it's so great. And that's why I reckon it's great that he's going under the radar, because if he is going under the radar, as you said then, he can go out there and kick 5 on Friday night. And no one's really talking about it because deep down, we kind of expect that. It's kind of either going to be Charlie Curnow or Harry Mackay. But the question before we move on to the match predictions, who do you see going to Harry Mackay? Because whether it's going to be a Nick Blakey, and maybe Nick Blakey goes to Charlie Curnow and McCartan maybe goes to Mackay, because Curnow dominated against McCartan last year. But also maybe it's going to be Robbie Fox. But I can tell you this right now, if Harry Mackay goes on to Robbie Fox, Harry Mackay might kick 10, Davy boy. But but who do you think? Who's your option? And maybe whether that changes McCartan's role to Charlie Curnow, maybe to Harry Mackay. Straight at the top of your head, who do you think goes to Harry Mackay?
I think they have to bring in Aaron Francis.
I agree.
They have to. I think they actually have. They're forced. They're forced to, because I think the matchups are too hard for these other guys, except for McCartan, obviously. But yeah, Aaron Francis will have to come in for mine. I think he can probably take Charlie, and then McCartan goes to Mackay. It's so hard. Like it'd be really tough for defenses to really sort out who they're playing against, because they'd be talking about that all week. They've probably been talking about it for 2 weeks. How are we going to nullify Charlie and Harry? And they've got to, if they nullify Charlie and Harry, they've still got Jack Martin to worry about. Yeah. Still got other guys to worry about. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think Aaron Francis has to come in, and that could be a positive for us too. Yeah.
And of course, Aaron Francis was the sub last week against Melbourne. And I think the only reason he was sub is because Melbourne really only have Van Ruin down there. They don't have a Grundy down there anymore. So they don't really have a key forward down there. So I completely agree. I think he's also a forgotten guy as well. Quite capable sort of defender. But I think if he's playing finals football, I think we can well and truly expect Harry Mackay or Charlie Curnow, whoever goes to Francis, to well and truly win that contest. But match predictions, Daffy Boy. Now, unbelievable that we are actually touching on the match predictions for an elimination final. But, Daff, I need your best on ground, your point of difference, and your winner plus margin for Friday night.
Yeah. Like I say every week, I'm pull it out of the top of my head. I pull it out my ass. Somehow the match predictions come out of somewhere out of my body within the last minute. I think about it the whole episode. My brain just clicks, goes like, yep, where am I going to go? Where am I going to head? And it's finally headed in the destination of prediction time. And best on ground for me, it's going to be Adam Chera. I think he has had too good of a year to not have a massive impact in finals footy, and I think he's not a forgotten name, but in terms of our midfield, people often go to Cripps and Walsh. He's another guy that's in there that's arguably would have been leading the BNF up until his injury, in my opinion. So Adam Chera, best on ground, point of difference is going to be Jesse Motlop. It's going to be Jesse Motlop at the MCG, kicking boonanas and, giving us a little bit of one of those celebrations he does, pulls the jumper, do a bit of something. As long as that ball's going through the middle, I don't care how he celebrates. As long as he does that. And winner plus margin, I've got Carlton by 28 points.
Wow. That's a bit of a blowout. I mean, not really a blowout, but for an elimination final, like I know that it's definitely a fair way off with what I have for the winning plus margin, but I do like him. I really do. And my point of difference is a little bit similar to Jesse Motlop. It's not Jesse Motlop, but it's someone else. So I'll start off with a bit of a niche sort of best on ground.
Oh.
David Cunningham. Now I'll say this right now. Wet weather footy. Cunners always performs. Well, he doesn't always perform, but he performs in those big games. Yep. Like what comes to mind? What comes to mind is when he dominates against Essendon, and
yes.
I just think that I don't know. I just had to skim through the lineup, and I'm like, you know what? I reckon Cunners could have a big game, and especially since his, I guess, selection has been a little bit talked about being a little bit vulnerable, and I think maybe he might be out this week. Well, I mean, I'm hoping not. Well, I'm hoping, or else I won't have a best on ground. But I think it's a big game for Cunners, and I reckon it will be. How fitting would it be the amount of crap he's gone through the past 2 or 3 years to dominate and to just push the Blue Baggers over the line? I think that would be great. But my point of difference, we touched on him a little bit later on in the episode, Jack Martin.
Yeah,
Jack Martin, man, he is going to be the point of difference. And if it's going to be raining on Friday night, he is that guy that if he gets a set shot from 40 meters out on a 90-degree angle, I'm going to trust him. Because he can kick he can fucking kick an apple from fucking 50 meters away if he wants to. He is dead-eye dick, mate. So now, winner plus margin, I have gone the Swans by 43. I'm kidding. Don't you worry. I've gone the Blue Baggers by 7 points.
Oh, fuck.
A little bit of I know. I might imagine us on fucking Friday night watching that. Like, we're fucking up by 1 and we're like, next minute, Jesse Motlop comes out of nowhere and kicks the winner. And, I think it's going to be quite a close game, especially knowing that it's going to be a wet game. Well, maybe it's going to be a wet game. I think that's why it's going to be quite a close game. But I still think we're going to be quite comfortable towards the end of the game. But, just what else can you say? Like, what else can you say? The Carlton supporters, I mean, all of us together, the slogan the past probably month from Carlton is together. And I think that pretty much sums up the season, where pretty much throughout the season, we were saying there is no way we're going to make finals. And then we kind of got on a trot, and then the supporters started to get a little bit stronger together. Yes. And they actually really kind of found a way to really get themselves into gear and actually find a finals position. And for a team that hasn't been there in 10 years they could have easily dropped their heads throughout the year saying, we could have easily just dropped some players and maybe even have a chance for Harley Reid at the end of the year. Now they're actually going towards a finals, I guess, like just a finals football, but also we're the 5th best team in the competition right now. So it's not like I think Vossi said it perfectly a couple of weeks ago. The job's not done. The job's not done. It's far from done. If we win this week, we are a genuine chance for the flag. Because that means that we will be playing against the loser of Melbourne and Collingwood. Could you imagine if it's Carlton v Collingwood in the semi-final and we eliminate them? I mean, we have to get past Sydney first, Daffy Boy, but could you just imagine? Could you imagine? Yeah. But, Daffy Boy, before we wrap up the episode, is there anything else you would like to touch on?
Mate, I'm just I'm pleased in the situation we're currently in. I'm worried. I'm not worried, but I'm just like, it's funny how football works, and we're talking them up, going, we can push for a premiership tilt, and then Friday night we could be done.
Yeah,
it could be done. So let's just soak it in for the time we have right now, and just really get behind them. And seriously, we can do damage. We can do damage. We just got to week by week, just get around them. I want to see. It will be a mighty roar at the MCG running out, and also the national anthem will be something to withhold. And they get around it too. Sydney, they get a few fans definitely down in Victoria, so it'll be interesting. But I want to make it a really hostile. Every ball, those players know on that ground, especially those Sydney players, know that they're playing against. They're not just playing against 22 other blokes. They're playing against 95,000 Carlton supporters of the MCG. They are playing against the 23rd man, which is us supporters out there. And let's just hope it's a good one, because it could be a very, very big Friday night if we get up, Patto.
Are you? Oh wait, are we going to go to billboards on Saturday? No, is that Saturday night? I don't even remember, mate. From back to when we were 18, 19. I don't remember what all the clubs were, but Friday night, I don't know what comes to mind, but I think it's Flamingo or something. But I'll see you there, definitely.
Right.
But
we'll see, mate. As long as there's beers on tap, mate, we'll be there.
Well, make sure there's Canadian club, and I will be there, mate. But but to touch on that's one thing that comes to mind is just the Australian national anthem when it comes finals football. That only happens then. I mean, of course, Anzac Day, but other than that, finals, and that's why it is just so special. And I've been every single final series. I've just been like watching. God, I wish Carlton players were out there.
Yeah,
I wish we could have the experience of listening to that, because I know I'll be full on goosebumps, but it might even have a tear in my eye.
Yes,
but just that moment though, I just think just hearing the anthem, I think every Carlton supporter has been like, everyone's just going to be insanely hyped in that moment. But well said, Duffy Boy. Once again, another great preview episode. Who knows? It might be our last preview for the whole year, but we don't know. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully we have, of course, 3 more previews after this one to head into the grand final. But to all their subscribers and listeners out there, and of course viewers as well, make sure to like, comment your thoughts and how you might see this game play out on Friday night, and of course subscribe. It really does help us out. We're trying to build our channel, but also trying to build our audience. I think it's an absolute blast that I think we're both having an absolute blast doing it every single week. And I think right now it's an insane feeling that we're finally doing some finals content. It might be the last time I say this, but to you, Daffy Boy, and to all the blue baggers out there, up the baggers!
Come on.